Am I recording? Hi, class. Hopefully this will all work out. We're going to today start off with the consumer demand theory and talk about total utility and marginal utility. We're going to go through the PowerPoint presentation and then the related graphs that I emailed to you. So you'll be required to have the total and marginal utility graph and some spare paper with a pencil, and have that ready, and then we will later on construct a table for some of the problems that we will be working through. So where you see that word utility, please make a note that that word utility stands for satisfaction. It's the satisfaction that you receive from consuming an item. Hopefully we spend our money in such a way on things that we get satisfaction from and actually enjoy. So now I'm going to move over to slide number 2. And there's that word satisfaction. Utility means satisfaction that we get from consuming whatever items that we are interested in. The number of utils that we get, or the number of satisfaction that we get, increases at a decreasing rate. And that is the total utility. Our total utility is increasing at a decreasing rate. The more of a commodity that we consume, the greater our level of satisfaction, or the higher our total utility will be. The total utility, like I said, increases at a decreasing rate. That is the extra utility that we receive. That is called the marginal utility. That causes our total utility to increase, but the more items that we consume, the less the marginal utility will be. So the total utility increases at a decreasing rate. That means the marginal utility will decrease the more items that we consume. At some level of consumption, the total utility received by us by consuming the commodity will reach a maximum. Please highlight that word maximum, or make a note to it. That is where marginal utility is equal to 0. So wherever marginal utility is equal to 0, that means the total utility has been maximized. That point where marginal utility is equal to 0, that is called the saturation point. And the saturation point can come about several different ways. One of them could be a storage problem or a disposable problem. But the interesting thing at that point is that total utilities will start to fall, as you will see in the table and the graphs that will be coming up. So here on this table, what I'd like you to take a look for is where the parentheses open, and it says utility here is assumed to be measurable in terms of a fictitious unit called utils. Please highlight that somehow. And utils is this fictitious measurement, that how we measure satisfaction. It is fictitious because it's not a standard unit of measurement, such as a centimeter or a meter or a kilometer. So that's the important point here. This table here is where we're going to introduce the concept of marginal analysis. This is the satisfaction that we get from each unit that we consume. So we'll see in this table that if we consume 0 units of a commodity, our total satisfaction is 0. After consuming the first item, our total utility goes up to 9. Finish consuming the second item, our total utility goes to 18. Finish consuming the third item, our total utility goes to 24, and so forth. At the 5th unit of satisfaction, our total utility is 30. We consume one more item, our total utility remains at 30. This means we have maximized our level of satisfaction. If we consume one more unit, we see that our total utility starts to fall. And to analyze this, to analyze the marginal utility, what we have to do is we have to take the total utility of the second item, 10 less 0, divided by 1 less 0. We're going to get then 10 over 1, which is equal to 10. We get 10 extra units of levels of satisfaction by consuming the first item, so our total utility is 10. We consume a second item, and the marginal utility from the second item that we consume is 18 minus 10 divided by 2 less 1, which is 8 over 1 over 8 over 1, which is equal to 8. You can check your total utility if you go 0 plus the 10 here plus the 8 here, which is equal to 18. The one thing that you have to remember is that marginal analysis is always recorded in the middle at 0.5, halfway between the two levels of input from 0 to 1 at 0.5, halfway between 1 and 2, which is 1.5, halfway between 2 and 3, which is 2.5, and all the way to the bottom where it's between 6 and 7, which would be 6.5. So the marginal utility for this table can be seen on the next slide, where you see 10, which would be 10 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0, which is 10. 8, which would be 18 less 10 divided by 2 less 1, which is 1, and 8 divided by 1 would give you 8. And you do that for all the other ones, and these are the marginal utilities here. So the other interesting point right here, where you get your total utilities at its maximum, you're going to get 30 less 30 divided by 6 less 1, which is 0 over 1, which is 0. That is where your total utility is maximized. And that is also called the saturation point. The point where total utility, or marginal, sorry, where marginal utility is equal to 0, that is where total utility is maximized. If you decide to consume more items, then your total utility curve will fall. So here, your total utility is 828 less 30 divided by 7 less 1. Your marginal utility is going to be minus 2. 28 minus 30 is minus 2 divided by 1, which is minus 2. Now, what I'd like to do is switch over to the graphs that were emailed to you, the total and marginal utility curves. So hopefully you have these curves in front of you and hope have some sort of a copy, or you'll hopefully recall it. When you plot the data on your on the total utility schedule, it's going to give you a curve as illustrated in this handout. So if we consume one item, we're going to get 10 levels of satisfactions, or utils a total utility of 10. We consume the second item, we're going to get a total utility of 18. We consume 3 items, we're going to get a total utility of 24, and so forth. So in here we go, consume 5 items, 30 levels of satisfaction. 6, consume 6 items, get another 30, a total of 30. And if we consume 7 items, our total utility curve falls, and we only have 28 now. You can also calculate the marginal utility here by taking the slope between the 2 points. So if you take the slope between the points, the origin, the 0, 0, and the first point, which has a coordinates of 1 and 10, this would give you delta y over delta x. The change in y is 10. The change in x is 1, 10 over 1, which is equal to 10. You can also do it between the points 1 and 10 and 2 and 18. So your delta y for slope is going to be a change of 8 divided by a change of 1. 8 over 1 is 8, so you get your marginal utility of 8. And for another example, the last one that we will do here is the slope between points 3 and 24, or sorry, between 2 and 18 and 3 and 24. The rise here, the delta y is 6, and the change in x is 1. So you get a slope of 6 here. So 10, 8, and 6, and so forth. The marginal utility is going to be, as you saw in the tables, is going to be recorded halfway in between the two inputs, which is 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, and so forth. And the marginal utility curve is shown here. So here it is 0.5 and 10, 1.5 and 8, 2.5 and 6, and so forth. Here 4.5 and 2, and at 5.5 it's 0. That is the marginal utility of x is equal to 0. That is the saturation point. And if you draw a perpendicular from that point to the total utility curve, this dashed line, it should intersect the total utility in the middle, right there. And the important thing for you to realize is when I consume 5.5 units, it's the saturation point. That is where total utility is at its maximum. Okay, that's another graph. We'll get to that in another video. So let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, here we go. So if we plot the total and marginal utility schedule that we got from above, we get the total and marginal utility curve. Since marginal utility has been defined as the change in total utility in changing consumption by 1 unit. Each value of the marginal utility of x has been recorded midway, once again emphasizing that marginal utility must be recorded in the middle between the two levels of consumption. The saturation point, please note again, the saturation point is where marginal utility of x is equal to 0. This is reached when the individual, in this example, has increased consumption of the commodity x from 5 to 6. And this is important here. This illustrates the principle of diminishing marginal utility. So at some point, the marginal utility received from an additional unit of a good begins to decrease with each additional unit consumed. So, question number 1 for you. If the total utility curve is a straight line, that is, does not exhibit diminishing marginal utility, what will the marginal utility curve look like? And you are also given the answer here. The total utility curve is a straight line. The marginal utility curve will be flat. It will have a slope of 0. In other words, it will be parallel to the x-axis. Since marginal utility would not change with will not change with additional units of whatever commodity we are consuming. Question number 2, consuming more of a good generally increases its marginal utility. True or false? Give an explanation. Always remember in economics, you must give an explanation for some sort of an answer. The answer here is false, and it's false because of the principle of diminishing marginal utility. is that as one increases consumption of the good's marginal utility decreases. As you saw in the table, we received 10 additional units for the first commodity consumed, 8 for the second, and 6 for the third. And we add up those marginal utilities and we'll get our total utility, and it's increasing at a decreasing rate. Consumer equilibrium. The object of a rational consumer is to maximize the total utility or satisfaction that we get from spending our personal disposable income. This objective is reached, and the consumer is said to be in equilibrium when able to spend personal income in such a way that that utility or satisfaction of the last dollar spent on the various commodities is the same. Now, what is important here is that we can express this mathematically using the following ratio. We've got the marginal utility of the last item, the last X consumed divided by its price must be equal to the marginal utility of the last Y consumed divided by its price. And it must be, if we consume a third item, must be equal to the marginal utility of the last Z consumed divided by its price. But here is the corollary to it. It is subject to a constraint. And this constraint, and since we're talking about economics, is obviously got to be our income or our budget. And that will be equal to the price of X times the quantity of X plus the price of Y times the quantity of Y plus the price of Z times the quantity of Z, and so forth, must be equal to our income or our budget. We face a constraint in life, and our constraint is our income. Question number 3. Which is the rational choice, watching 1 hour of MTV that gives you 20 units of utility, or watching a 2-hour movie that gives you 30 units of utility? The key thing to remember here is that you have to find a common denominator. And the common denominator here is the number of utils that you receive on a per hour basis. So if you're watching MTV that gives you 20, watching 1 hour of MTV that gives you 20 units of utils, you're getting 20 units of satisfaction per hour. And if you're watching 2 hours of a movie that gives you 30 units of util, the utils that you receive on a per hour basis is going to be less than the 20. So the rational choice here will be for the consumer to watch MTV. So given a choice between the two, the rational choice is watching MTV for 1 hour, since it provides the highest marginal utility per hour. The key thing here, once again, is the highest marginal utility per hour. That is the key factor that you have to remember. True or false? You are maximizing total utility only when the marginal utility of all goods is 0. Explain your answer. This one here is false, because when the marginal utility is equal to 0, that means you're only consuming one item. But for the consumer to be in equilibrium, they're going to be consuming more than one item, and that's when you have to utilize that the marginal utility of the last X consumed divided by its price is equal to the marginal utility of the last Y consumed divided by its price, subject to the constraint. So it does not have to be when it's equal to 0. Here is an interesting problem. At least I think it's interesting. You're given this table, and you can tell from the far left side, it's a marginal utility table. And on the next slide, you are told that the price of X is $2, the price of Y is $1, and you have $12 to spend. And you have to spend the $12 in such a way that you will maximize your level of satisfaction and also determine the number of levels of satisfaction that you will receive. You can use the formula, which we just did, and work your way through it. You pick and choose where you want to start and then continue in a logical manner. And it's got to satisfy the condition, and at the same time, it's got to satisfy the constraint. Or we can go through the table that construct a table, and that's when I told you in the beginning of the video to have a piece of paper so that we can construct some sort of a table to analyze this problem. We'll do a couple of these problems, or there are a couple of solved problems in the notes that you can refer to later on, but we will work our way through this one together. So you have to spend the $12 in such a manner that you maximize your utility. And one of the conditions is it has to be an unbiased approach. So the number of X's and the number of Y's that you buy have to be given an equal or a fair chance of being bought. So one of the first things that we have to decide is how are we going to spend our money, and to give X and Y an equal opportunity. X costs $2, Y costs $1. So what we have to do is spend our money in two $1 lots. So if we can spend $1 then, and we have enough to buy Y, or we can spend the two $1 and spend $2 at a time and buy X. So if we're going to do that, then we have to determine, are we going to buy X or Y first? If we buy the first X, we spent if we buy the first X, we will get 16 levels of utility. That's our total utility after consuming one item, and we spent a total of $2. But if we spent $1, $2 on Y, we can buy the first Y and get 11 units of satisfaction. Then we have $1 left, and we can buy the second one. We spent $2, but we have 11 plus 10 units of satisfaction for a total of 21. 21 is greater than 16, so the logical choice is to buy the first two Y's. So in your table that you're going to construct, you're going to give yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns, and you're going to label it quantity X, quantity Y, margin. For the first column is quantity X, the second column is quantity Y, third column is going to be the marginal utility for X. The next one is going to be the marginal utility of Y, and then you're going to have your total utility, and then you're going to have a subtotal for dollars and total dollar column. So from our explanation, we said we were going to buy the first two Y's. We're going to record those in our table, and we're going to consume the first Y, and get a total level, and get a total, and our marginal utility is 10, and our total utility is 10. We're also going to buy the second Y, and the marginal utility, when we buy the first Y, we're going to get 11 units of satisfaction for a total of 11. Then we're going to buy the second Y, and we're going to get a marginal utility of 10 from that one, and our total level of satisfaction is 21, and we spent $1 on each. We spent $2 in total. Where are we going to now spend our third and fourth dollar? Are we going to buy the first X, or are we going to buy the third Y, and the fourth Y. If we buy the first X, once again, we're only going to get 16 levels of satisfaction, and we spent $2. If we buy the third and fourth Y, we're going to get 9 plus 8, which is a total of 17, and 17 is greater than 16, so the logical choice is to buy the third and fourth Y. So we're going to buy the third Y. We're going to get 9 additional levels of satisfaction for a total of 30 total utils. We spent $1 and we spent $3 in total. We're going to buy also the fourth Y. That gives us 8 additional units of satisfaction. Now we have a total level of satisfaction, or total utilities, of 8, spent another $1, and we've spent $4. So we've now consumed the first 4 Ys. Question now is, where are we going to spend the fifth and sixth dollar? We're going to spend the fifth and sixth dollar. If we spend it on X, sorry, we're going to get 16 levels of satisfaction. If we buy the fifth and sixth unit of X, we are going to get 13 levels of satisfaction, 7 plus 6. The logical consumer is going to buy the first X because they get a higher degree of satisfaction. So the first X will be bought, and they will get the first X will be bought, and they'll get 16 units of satisfaction for a total now of 54, and $2 has been spent for a total of 6. So presently, we've consumed the first 4 Ys and the first X. Where are we going to spend the seventh and eighth dollar? If we buy the fifth and sixth unit of Y, if we spend the fifth and sixth unit of Y, we will only get 13 levels of satisfaction, the 7 plus the 6. But if we buy the second X, we will get 14 levels of satisfaction. 14 is greater than 13, so the logical choice is to buy the second X. So now we have bought our second X. We've got 14 additional units of satisfaction. Our total utility then will rise to 68. We spent another $2, and we spent $8 in total. Where are we going to spend the ninth and 10th dollar? The ninth and 10th dollar, are we going to buy the fifth and sixth unit of Y, or are we going to buy the third unit of X? We will buy the fifth and sixth unit of Y because it gives us 13 levels of satisfaction. If we buy the third unit of X, we will only get 12. 13 is greater than 12, therefore we will buy the fifth and sixth unit of Y. The fifth unit will give us an additional 7 units of satisfaction. Now the total utility is 75. We spent $1, now we spent 9. We will buy the sixth unit of Y. It will give us a total of an additional 6 units of satisfaction. And now we have a total of 81. We spent another $1, and now we have spent a total of 10. Where are we going to spend the 11th and 12th dollar? Well, if we spend the 11th and 12th dollar and spend $2 on X, we will buy the third X, and we get 12 units of satisfaction. If we spend it on the 7th and 8th unit of Y, we will only get 9. So once again, logically, we will buy the third unit of X and get 12 additional units of satisfaction. So we will buy the third unit of X, get 12 additional units of satisfaction, add that to the previous 81, and we will get 93 levels of satisfaction. We spent $2, and now we have spent 12. So we can see from this table that we just created that we have spent our $12 and the maximum level of satisfaction that we can get is at 93. This is the best way to spend the $12 given the prices of X and Y and the marginal utility received from each of them. So here we're just going to summarize what we just walked through. Once again, X costs $2, Y costs $1, and we have $12 in total to spend. So with continuously decreasing marginal utility, overall total utility can be maximized by maximizing the utility received from spending $1 at a time. This is the important decision that we have to make at the beginning, that we're only going to spend $1 at a time so that the X's and the Y's have an equal opportunity of being bought. The individual should spend the first and second dollar of personal income to purchase the first and second unit of Y. From these, a total of 21 utils is received. If the consumer spent the first $2 of personal income to purchase the first unit of X, only 16 utils is received. The third and fourth dollars should be spent on purchasing the third and fourth unit of Y. From these, the consumer will receive a total of 17 utils. The individual should spend the fifth and sixth dollar to purchase the first unit of X. Here, the consumer receives 17 utils. The seventh and eighth should again be spent on the second unit of X and receive 14 utils. The ninth and $10th should be used to buy the fifth and sixth unit of Y. These gives the individual a total of 18 utils. The individual should spend the last $2 to buy the third unit of X, from which 12 utils will be received, rather than to buy the seventh and eighth unit of Y. If you bought the seventh and eighth unit of Y, you would only receive 9 utils. So the overall total utility received is 93. This 93 agrees with our table that we just constructed and got 93 levels of utils here by consuming the first 3 X's and the first 6 Y's, and we spent our $12. I'm going to continue to go through here and go to slide number 29. And on slide number 29, you have the formula that we saw earlier on, where the formula once again reads the marginal utility of the last X consumed divided by its price must be equal to the marginal utility of the last Y consumed divided by its price. If you take a look again at the table, the last X we consumed was unit number 3, and it gave us 12 additional units of satisfaction. So 12 divided by 2 is equal to 6. And if we go to the last Y consumed, which was the sixth Y, it gives us 6 additional units of satisfaction divided by its price, which is $1. So 12 divided by 2 is equal to 6. 6 divided by 1 is also equal to 6. We can continue. Remember, the condition, this is part 1, must be satisfied, which it is, and it must also satisfy the constraint, and the constraint is our budget here. And the budget, once again, is the price of X divided by the quantity of X plus the price of Y times the quantity of Y is equal to our budget. The price of X is $2, and we consume the first 3 X's. And we're going to add to that the price of Y times the first 6 Y's that we consumed. So 2 times 3 plus 1 times 6 is equal to 12. Therefore, the condition number 1 and the constraint, part number 2 here, are satisfied at the same time, we will accept that. Any other combinations of X and Y here will not maximize our level of satisfaction. As soon as you find, if you use the formula, as soon as you find the condition where the condition and the constraint are satisfied, you can stop and the problem is over. Okay, so to give you a little more exercise on this, we're going to do the first problem, which is similar to the one that we just completed. And then I'm going to let you work through the other ones, and the detailed solutions are there. So in this problem, you have a total budget of $10 and you're going to your local pub to have beer and pizza. The price of beer here is $2 per half liter. I'd like to know where that pub is. And $1 per slice of pizza. Use the table below, maximize your utility. So the first row, you have the first row here, you have the quantities consumed. Your first beer, your first pizza, your second beer, your second pizza, and so forth. You know this is a marginal utility table two ways. First, I'm telling you it is right here, marginal utility. And if you look at the second way, if you look at the table, you'll see that these numbers are decreasing. So you're going to get your highest level of satisfaction from the first item consumed. And then the level of satisfaction or utils that you receive from the second item will be a little less, and so forth. The same with pizza on the way down. So how are we going to spend our money? So once again, I'm going to suggest that you work very neatly on these problems so that you can draw conclusions right away. The price of beer here is $2. The price of pizza is $1, and our budget is $10. I've reproduced the table here that we have to work with. And again, the decision that you have to make right up front is how are we going to spend our money? We're going to spend our money in two $1 lots. That gives us, once again, an equal opportunity to buy the beer and the pizza, and it's going to be bias free. So we're going to, in this problem here, we're going to say, how are we going to spend the $2? Are we going to buy the beer for $2 or the slice of pizza for $1 each? We're going to spend our money in lots of two $1 bills. So if I buy the first beer, I'm going to get 20 levels of satisfaction, and I've spent my money. But if I buy the pizza, I'm going to get, after consuming the first pizza, I'm going to get 20 levels of satisfaction. Then I'm going to spend the second $1, and I'm going to buy the second slice of pizza, and I'm going to get an additional 15. The 20 plus the 15 is a total of 35 levels of satisfaction, and I spent $2. But if I spend $2 on the beer, I'm only going to get to 20 levels of satisfactions, or 20 utils. So I'm going to spend the first $2 on buying the pizza. I'm going to get the first pizza is going to give me 20 levels. The second slice of pizza is going to give me 15 for a total of 35. And I spent $2 in total. Where am I going to buy? How am I going to spend my next lots of $2? Am I going to buy the third slice of pizza, which gives me 10, and the fourth slice of pizza, which gives me 15? An additional 5 for a total of 15? Or am I going to spend the $2 on beer, which gives me 20 levels of satisfaction, or 20 utils? The logical choice is I should spend the money on the first beer, which gives me 20 units of satisfaction versus only 15. So my table now is going to record that I'm going to buy the first beer for an additional 20 units of satisfaction. The 20 plus the 35 is going to give me 55 levels of utils in total. I spent $2, now I've spent a total of 4. The next question is, where am I going to spend my next lot of $2, the fifth and $6? Am I going to buy the third and fourth slice of pizza, which gives me a total of 15 levels of satisfaction, or am I going to buy my second beer, which gives me 16? 16 is greater than 15, therefore I will buy the second beer. The second beer gives me 16 levels of satisfaction. I will add that to the total, 55, and now I will get 71 units of satisfaction. I spent $2, and now I spend a total of $6. So I've consumed the first 2 slices of pizza. I've consumed the first 2 beers. The question now is, where am I going to spend the 7th and 8th dollar? Am I going to buy the third beer and get 10 levels of satisfaction? Or am I going to buy the third and fourth pizza and get 15? Well, the logical choice, once again, is to buy pizza, which gives me 15. 15 is greater than 10. So therefore, the next $2 will be spent on the third and fourth slice of pizza, which will give me an extra 10, an extra 5, and I will add that to the 71 to give me a total of 86. I spent another $2, and now I have spent a total of $8. Where am I going to spend the next $2, the 9th and 10th? Well, we've consumed the first 2 beers and the first 4 slices of pizza. So if I buy the next 2 slices of pizza for $2, I'm going to get a net increase of 2 additional utils, or two levels of satisfaction. Or I buy the third beer and I will get 10 units of satisfaction. Obviously, I will buy the third beer. And by the third beer, I get an additional 10. 86 plus the 10 will give me a total of 96 levels of satisfaction. I spent an additional $2. Now I have spent my total budget of 10. Any other combinations of pizza and beer will not maximize my level of satisfaction in this problem, given the data that we have to work with. I hope this brief video has answered some of your questions. If you have any other questions regarding total and marginal utility, please email them to me at nlemberg@conestogac.on.ca, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. I will be posting tomorrow sometime a video which will be a review, bunch of questions to review the second test that you will be writing on Saturday. And hopefully that will help and prepare you a little further along the way in being very successful in writing test number 2. Good night or good day, and we'll see you next time. Let me get out of here. So I got to stop this thing. And okay, how did that go?